Farage does human, Starmer does robot. And, Starmer has no personal appeal. He can't relate to people. He can't connect with people.
Personally, I think Zack Polanski of the Green Party, I think he's going to make a massive dent in Labour's vote.
I don't. Well, he might in Labour's vote. I don't think he's going to touch Farage. I think Polanski is going to crash and burn.
There's plenty of people in the country who heard a comment and would say that that's a racist thing to say.
But there's plenty of people who don't, especially people. I mean, I read lots of comments from black and Asian people who said they didn't feel it was racist at all.
Welcome to the Daily Expresso. I'm JJ Anisiobi. It is cold, it's miserable, it's windy. It's Carole Malone.
Do you know what? I just don't know why, but I'm going to walk out of here. Anyway, it's nice to see you've got a different suit on this week, instead of wearing that same tired old brown thing every week.
You know what? Because I abuse you every single episode.
Yes.
This morning,
yes,
our lovely PA
yes.
had a letter sent in about you.
Saying,
and it's actually a nice letter.
Is it a
real.
Nice letter?
It's handwritten.
Funny enough, you get a lot of them about me. None about you, oddly, but lots about me.
That's actually very true. So this says, Dear Sir or Madam, I'm just writing to say we buy the Express every day and Carole Malone should be in government. She's the only person that tells it as it is. She has the most common sense that anybody has. She deserves a knighthood for common sense alone. Thank you, reader of your paper for over 60 years, A. Williams.
Is it a lady or a man, do you think?
I think from the penmanship, I think this is a woman.
Okay.
It's very neat.
We should just say, the thing is, I get a lot of letters like that. But the thing is, I would abuse the power, of course. I would completely abuse it, and I would be mad. I'd be Thatcher on steroids.
I think you are Thatcher on steroids.
So maybe I am. Yeah, okay. Well, tell her thank you very much.
Thank you, A. Williams. Him or her, wonderful. Before we get into the main show, just let's touch on Prunella.
Yes. She died age of 93. She's had Alzheimer's for 20 years. But, everyone remembers her for her brilliant portrayal of Sybil Fawlty.
Yeah.
And I got a shock yesterday because in my head I thought Fawlty Towers went on for years. But it was actually only ever 12 episodes.
Yeah.
And she kind of buried her way into the British psyche in just 12 episodes of a very funny sitcom. And I suppose a lot of the tragedy for her was that no one ever knew her as anything else. And she was a brilliant actress. She did lots of incredible things. Mm-hmm. But people only ever remember her for that. And I've seen lots of clips on telly over the past few days. And do you remember John Cleese used to call her, on the screen, he used to call her My Little Commandant and My Little Piranha Fish. Yeah. This is within the series. But she was never meant to get the part. Cleese wanted someone else.
Oh.
And she went for a chat with him, and it was at home because he had flu and she had to go to his home, and she read it, and he says the minute she read it, it was clear to him there's never going to be anybody else to play this role. But great sadness, she got Alzheimer's, but not so much a sadness in the sense that Timothy West, her husband of 60 years, and her did stuff together. They did a great series of Canal Blows. Remember that?
Yep, I remember that. And
it was so heartwarming because he made it look very easy to live with someone with Alzheimer's, and she was. It was just the love between them was incredible. I mean, it was palpable, it was tangible, and he always said it was never a burden for him because it was always his Prunella. He never talked about, people talk about losing the person they love because of Alzheimer's, and he said he never did. They just adapted to it, and it's just very sad she's gone.
It is,
and we will miss her, but we will always laugh at Fawlty Towers, and that's how we will remember her.
Absolutely.
With a smile.
Rest in peace, Prunella. Now, let's talk about a recent poll result, because for the first time ever, Nigel Farage is the voters' preferred choice for Prime Minister. A new Ipsos poll puts the Reform UK leader ahead of Starmer, 33% to 30%, marking Farage's first lead in the pollsters' history. Carole, what do you make of this? A massive turning point in British politics?
Yeah, I think it is. But I don't know why anybody would be surprised. I think Starmer would think it said he'd make a better Prime Minister than the post Farage would make a better Prime Minister than Starmer. And I think Starmer even thinks that. He's constantly talking about Farage. It's like he lives rent-free inside his head. Every time Starmer makes a speech, he mentions Farage in that speech, which is quite funny, I think, considering that the Reform Party has 5 MPs in Parliament, just 5 MPs. And yet Starmer and his party are terrified of Farage. And it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people about this today already, and it's people saying, well, why would they? And to me it's like really simple, Farage does human, Starmer does robot, and Starmer has no personal appeal. He can't relate to people, he can't connect with people. There's that old cliche, isn't there, about politician, which politician would you like to go down to the pub with and have a pint? And Farage is that man. But I think more seriously about it, him and Reform have become the party of the working classes, because Labour has let the working classes down so badly, and Reform has slipped into that gap. Yeah. And it is astonishing that parties to the right are serving the working classes now, as opposed to parties of the left. But I think we need a revolution in politics. And I know we're going to talk about Liz Truss in a minute. She talked about that yesterday with you. Farage is not going to be as good as we would like him to be, probably, but he has to be better than Starmer in this Labour Party. But I don't care. I just want a shake-up, because the Tories aren't fit to govern. The rest of them aren't either. So I want to see what Reform can do. And I think a lot of people look to Farage because, A, he connects with them, B, he understands the things that bother them. He doesn't live in this ideological bubble that Labour seems to. He's a man of huge personality, and people relate to that. And I think when he says he's going to get foreign criminals deported, he will. I think when he says we're going to leave the ECHR, we will. I may be wrong, but I think we need a Farage now in the same way. And I think a lot of people, I did a show earlier today where people were ringing in lifelong Labour voters who will never vote Labour again. Never, because of what Starmer has done or not done in the past 14 months. And they are looking to Farage as their saviour.
Well, personally, I think, 4 years until the next general election, perhaps. It's a long time. But I think Zack Polanski of the Green Party, I think he's going to make a massitive dent in Labour's vote.
I don't. Well, he might in Labour's vote. I don't think he's going to touch Farage. I think Polanski is going to crash and burn. I don't trust the guy. I think he's all about.
He has charisma. He's cutting through.
He does not have charisma.
He does have charisma.
He's decidedly weird, I think.
He's not.
And I say that having met him and talked to him. I think he doesn't even believe half of what he says. I think he says it to create waves, to make waves.
He's got more members than the Tory party have got.
That's not saying much, JJ, is it really? Probably got more members than Labour as well, actually. But, I think the guy is a self-publicist, and I don't see him as a leader of any kind. I think he's making a dent in Labour now because people, if they're looking for another party, Labour voters, might not want to go as far as Farage, but they would go as far as the Greens. But I think he's going to crash and burn before the election. I really do. I don't think he's going to make any dent on politics whatsoever.
I think the Green Party could end up being coalition with Labour.
With Labour?
Yeah.
Nah, I don't.
Yeah, that could keep out Farage.
I don't. Because Labour are finished in the same way we thought the Tories were finished, and they're not actually, because they're coming back a bit now.
Yeah.
Kemi had a bump from their conference, from that speech at conference. I don't think Labour will come back for decades after the next election. I think they're going to do so much damage in the next 3 years that the Greens wouldn't want to team up with them, even if they could. I think the Greens would actually think, if they're doing very well, why would you team up with a party that's actually, turned the country the other way? Why would you do that? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Polanski is actually too vain to want to share the glory with anyone. So if it could be a Farage first and a Green second, but anyway.
I think, honestly, mark my words, I'm saying it today on episode 42 of Daily Expresso, I think Zack Polanski and the Green Party are going to be part of the reason that Labour maintain power.
Yes, the man who said he could make women's breasts bigger by hypnotising them. Yeah, he's really he's had no political experience before. He's not.
And that's what we need. That's what you're saying.
No,
we need a revolution.
No,
what do people think differently?
No. I want someone who, when they say, like when I was on a debate with him the other week, and he talked about legalising all drugs, he didn't have a clue what he was talking about. You pin him down, and he's done no reading on it. He doesn't know where. He doesn't even know where drugs have been legalised. He doesn't know the results of that. I'd done a bit of research and bothered to do that. And, even the examples he cited, like Portugal, where he said decriminalising drugs, it has not. It's been a disastrous experiment. So when somebody goes on telly and spouts nonsense, I just don't believe in them. And I think he does.
That's why you don't believe in me, Carole.
No, well, that's true. Obviously. Yeah. But, what I thought was interesting this week was the fuss that Labour made. This shows to me how desperate Labour are at the moment. Sarah Poton's comments about, the over-representation of Black and Asian people in TV adverts. She made a comment. You'd think to listen to the left, she had just gone on air and started to say how terrible it was that Black and Asian people were on adverts. She didn't do that at all. She was on a radio show and she was answering a question from a punter who'd rung in, who had said he had noticed this. And she had said yes. Her mistake was in saying, it drives me mad. Stupid thing to say. Bad choice of words. However, the fact of the matter is that is what's happening, and we have data to prove that. And we know why. I mean, I talked to a top ad boss the other day who said there was a time when Black and Asian people were badly underrepresented in TV ads. And he said the ad industry wanted to correct it for fear of being called racist or not following DEI policies. And he said they overcorrected it and they did it all at the same time. So it became very obvious what we were talking about. So, but it was just Labour's reaction. At a time this country is in the toilet, at a time they're about to impose the most punishing budget we've ever had, the most punishing taxes we've ever had, he gets all of his cabinet out for that entire day to rubbish and trash and spew bile and venom at Sarah Poton and brand her as a racist. And I just thought, seriously, is this what Labour is about? This is one woman who made some ill-judged comments on a radio show, and they have the whole cabinet slating her a racist.
Well, there's plenty of people in the country who heard a comment and would say that that's a racist thing to say.
But there's plenty of people who don't, especially people, I read lots of comments from Black and Asian people who said they didn't feel it was racist at all, that it was a fact that they too had noticed the overrepresentation. 51% of Black people featuring in TV ads when Black people make up 4% of the population.
Yeah.
That is an overrepresentation.
Now, listen, if we're talking about like NHS adverts or something like that, fair dues. But if I'm JJ's pie shop and I want to have only Asian women in my adverts, it's my company. I'll do what I want. If people are sick of seeing it, don't buy my pies.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, when you have a government, which we have in a party, which doesn't mind allowing white people to be slated, as we saw with Humza Yousaf, that rant about too many white people in the Scottish Parliament. He just went through a list, too many this, too many that. The Scottish leader, the Scottish Labour leader in Scotland did exactly the same thing, but no one caused a fuss about that. So why does it work one way and not the other?
Because that's literally, talking of government, that's completely different to a private company advertising.
No, it's not.
If Sainsbury's or Argos or whoever want to put whoever they want in the adverts, if they put one disabled person in an advert with 10 other people,
trouble is they don't.
But my point is,
trouble is they don't.
But that's up to them. It's a private company. This is not public owned. This is not a government thing. If people talk about government representation, that's completely different. Talking about an advert where you have a choice to not buy their product. That simple. Yeah. Let's move on.
Right.
Yesterday, I sat down with former Prime Minister Liz Truss, and during the interview, she gave her thoughts on who really runs Britain. According to former PM, it's not Keir Starmer, and it ain't Rachel Reeves. Truss claims the country has been controlled for decades by what she calls left-wing, incompetent technocrats. They're pulling the strings behind the scenes. She believes real power lies with the civil service and institutions that hire and fire, set the budgets, and decide how policies are actually implemented. And she didn't actually stop there. She called Tony Blair the last Prime Minister who actually ran the country. Now, those are big claims from a former PM, and a question that cuts to the core of British democracy. Who is really in charge? Carole, I kind of agreed with Liz. I saw her point.
Well, it's not a new story. That series years ago, Yes Minister, the civil service absolutely ran the country. Mm-hmm. They were telling government what to do, which is not surprising because, when you have a minister in a job, he can know nothing about his department whatsoever. So he has to be tutored and schooled in it, which I find a ridiculous state of affairs. But anyway,
yeah.
But she's right. The civil service does run the country, and very, very badly. Bearing in mind, half of them are sitting at home most days. They won't come into the office and they're sitting on the sofa watching telly. It is no wonder it has been described by the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, as not fit for purpose, because it's not. And that's not a new claim either. 20 years ago, John Reid, the then Home Secretary, said then it wasn't fit for purpose. It was being run by people who didn't know what they were doing. And a new report last week called it dysfunctional and not fit for purpose. And one of the stories that highlighted, if you remember, was the asylum contracts, that the civil service are giving out these asylum contracts to 3 major providers in the country. And the contracts weren't properly drafted, so they couldn't claim back billions of pounds in revenue. They couldn't claim it back. So they've actually literally squandered billions of our money. And you think, how can these people who are on these massive, public service salaries, not accountable to anyone, how can they get away with this? If you did that in the private sector, if you squandered billions of someone's money, you'd be kicked out on your backside. But if it's government and it's us that's paying the money, if it's taxpayers, they don't give a stuff. And remember, this is the same Home Office that a couple of years ago, when the Tories were in power and they were being asked to implement certain immigration policies, said it offended their sensitivities and they didn't believe in these immigration policies. No, wake up, guys. It's not your job to believe in them. It's your job to do them. And we have to blame governments because they've let these people think they run the country and they've let them get away with very bad behaviour. If they can't even make them come into the office, how are they going to make them implement policies that they might not like?
Well, she blamed Tony Blair as well, said he was the last Prime Minister. I know lots of our viewers always go into the comments and hammer Tony Blair. He introduced lots of bills that meant we don't have to have elected officials in these other places. I mean, the Bank of England, I think they get to be the governor for 8 years before they have to move on. Mark Carney was pretty questionable.
You can cock it up for 8 years and no one can do anything about it. That is what is astonishing, All the guys who run these civil service departments, they're on 300, 400 grand a year, plus expenses, plus bonuses. And if they cock it up, they get a massive payoff, almost 2 years' salary, and they leave with a big fat pension. So there is no accountability, there is no consequences for whatever it is that they might do wrong. And Truss is right on that, although, a lot of people would say, what does she know? Because she was Prime Minister for 3 months and she cocked it up big style. I happen to think, had her policies been allowed to be implemented, put in place, whatever, I have a feeling they might have worked. I think she was tough. I think she was no nonsense. In that sense, she was a leader in a way that Starmer never will be, and in a way that I don't think Kemi Badenoch is either. But, the Tories have come back a bit in the past fortnight. Yeah. So who knows? But, yeah. Did you get on with her?
I did get on well with her, but I get on well with everyone, Carole.
No, you don't. It's a lie. But yeah, was she impressive?
In the whole of the interview, yes.
Yeah.
I think if people are going to take snapshots of what she said and cut it up, and then she may sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist.
Is she bitter and twisted at having been kicked out?
No, she's not bitter and twisted. But I think there's some Schadenfreude with her for the fact that Reeves and Labour are doing so badly compared to how she did in her 49 days.
Yes,
yeah.
Of course. And the thing is, Truss is another person that lives inside Keir Starmer's head rent-free as well, because whenever there's a problem, he and Reeves blame Brexit, Liz Truss, Thatcher. But Liz Truss is in that little group of people and things that get blamed for. Yeah. And you're right, she was only there for 3 months.
Yeah. Make sure you go back and watch yesterday's episode with Liz Truss. London Mayor Sadiq Khan found himself on the defensive this week, squirming under tough questioning over grooming gangs, insisting once again that London is not like the North. The grinning comes just days after the Met launched a review of 9,000 child sexual exploitation cases stretching back 15 years. Critics, including Nigel Farage and Tory Assembly member Susan Hall, say Khan has spent years denying the scale of the problem and prioritising politics over action. The review aims to uncover past failures, improve victim support and tighten protocols, but Khan's handling continues to draw scrutiny as the London Mayor faces a reckoning on turning a blind eye to the scandal. He says London's not like the North. He's dismissed it many times when he's been questioned about it. For me, just using common sense, the fact that there's so many people in London,
it's a capital
city, it would suggest that there probably are some grooming gangs in this magnificent city of ours. For him to just be like, no, don't know what you're talking about.
But he doesn't have. This is nonsense. Khan is avoiding this, and we saw in the London Assembly a couple of weeks ago when Susan Hall 9 times asked him if grooming gangs existed in London, and he pretended that he didn't understand the question. I mean, it's not a hard question. Mm-hmm. Are there any grooming gangs in London? And 9 times she repeated it. And 9 times he avoided answering. He's not going to be able to avoid answering now, not least because of the work of this newspaper and Zack Purkis, who was the investigations editor here, who has unearthed all of this and actually brought it to light. And there's also an ex-copper called John Wedger, who had gone to his bosses years ago and told them this was happening in London. And he had, I think it was something like 52 cases that he knew of girls who'd been abused. And he was told by his bosses to forget this, to forget it had ever gone on. If he pursued it, he'd lose his job, he'd lose his home, he'd lose his family, he'd lose everything. And that was the attitude back then, because coppers, people in the social services, people in councils were terrified of being called racist for pursuing Pakistani rape gangs, and we've got to start calling them that. I say it in the paper all the time. They call them grooming gangs. No, these are rape gangs, mainly Pakistani rape gangs. And yet, we have seen with the inquiry that has started of late, which Farage says is dead in the water, by the way, which it is dead in the water. We've seen them before the inquiry had even started try to broaden out the scope of it, so as not just to concentrate on Pakistani rape gangs, to concentrate on sexual abuse in general. That's not what this is about. This is about justice for young, vulnerable girls who have been raped, abused and tortured by men. In London, we don't know if it's predominantly Pakistani gangs, but there are certainly rape gangs in London, to the point where the Met have opened up 9,000 new cases of abuse, again down to this newspaper. They're going to relook at these cases. And I think this is going to blow up into the kind of scandal that could take Sadiq Khan down. Because when you try and hide something like this, people always say the cover-up is worse than the crime. In this case, it's not, because what you have are potentially thousands of ruined lives of girls who John Wedger describes girls as young as 9 being taken to crack houses, being sold for $2,000 a time, being taken to posh Mayfair restaurants and sold to people there. This has been happening, and Khan has tried to hide it, and he has tried to hide it. He said that originally there weren't grooming gangs in London, and then we know that we saw. Not only had he read reports about gangs, he had replied to the people who'd supplied him with reports and made comments on it. So he can't pretend he didn't know. So, I mean, I hope they throw the book at him for this. I really do, because we keep on hearing we've learned lessons from Rotherham and Rochester. Well, no, we haven't. If they're still trying to cover up what happened to girls, we've learned nothing.
So how much responsibility should Khan take for the historical failings?
Well, not for historical failings, but for as long as he has been in power, which I think is 2016, is it? Right back then, and there were reports back then, and that's when some of his emails, in answer to these reports that we have, he should take responsibility for that. You would think that someone in power, someone who was a father of 2 daughters, who would get a report like that in front of his desk would say, whoa, we've got to look into this, and throw money at that, throw resources at it, get it looked at. Not just because it's London, but because of what had happened in Rotherham and Rochester and all the other parts of the country where it was ignored. But I think Khan is scared of what this would do to his core Muslim vote in the city, the vote that keeps him getting back into power. I think he's worried about offending Muslims in general. And I think he is hiding behind that thing again of let's not make it about Pakistani or gangs that are aligned to a particular religion. Let's make it broad. And that's what he's trying to do. And when he's been asked for comments on this, he has put out statements that talk about his what he's doing in terms of abuse generally, in terms of criminal abuse and abuse by criminal gangs on the streets. He will not concentrate on the rape gangs, and he has to. His job should depend on it.
Okay. And finally, from the House of Commons to the stage, Jeremy Corbyn is swapping political booze for cheers at a pantomime. The former Labour leader, now an independent MP, will make an on-screen cameo as the Wizard of Oslington, that's Oz and Islington put together, in a drag production of Wicked Witches at a North London theatre. Now, Corbyn says panto is all about fun, inclusivity, and a bit of festive magic, and he's ready to sprinkle some wizardry of his own. Meanwhile, his new left-wing party, still going by the highly imaginative Your Party, teeters on the edge of chaos. Fingers crossed he's more intimidating in drag than he is in Parliament. Are you going to get a ticket, Carole?
Do you know what? I mean, I don't know what they're charging for these tickets, but if ever anyone who buys a ticket to see Jeremy Corbyn, there's something wrong. But also, if you want a surefire way to close a production and make sure it has an incredibly short run, get Jeremy Corbyn on the stage. I think it's just, talk about, what is the opposite of Christmas spirit? Well, I don't know what the opposite of is, but he is it. And the idea that he'd be in a pantomime, my God, he'll terrify the children. Any child that actually, it's not, maybe his children won't be there if it's a drag panto. I don't know, but I mean, what is he doing anyway? What is that about?
Well,
ego, vanity. What's that about?
I gather he's going to do like a pre-recorded thing, and his face will be put up on the big screen as the Wizard of Oz.
All the kids go, Mum, take me home.
He is very popular in his state, I'll call it, of Islington.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's the independent. He won it as independent.
The good thing is, his Your Party is almost in the toilet now because, the Greens will have, as you said earlier, smashed him out of the water.
Yeah.
It's going nowhere. And plus, remember, he's got Zara Sultana as well.
That is a problem. That is a problem, I think.
Or actually, there's the thing that would close a panto on one night. The two of them together, Zara and Jeremy, on a stage at the same time. Wow.
Well, Carole, thank you very much for another wonderful show. Oh, the caffeine has worn off, and that is all we've got time for. Thank you for watching Daily Expresso. Join us again tomorrow, where we're joined by Tory MP Esther McVeigh. Bye-bye.